Um, it probably is. I know your class goes into May, right? So and you're starting Selenium, but so one of the things I know a few folks are still joining. One thing I wanted to do today is just give you a little bit more, like I said last time, more pointers for technical interviews. And it's not because you are about to start interviewing. You may probably have months till you start, but as you have these pointers, you will start preparing, and you don't really prepare for interview the day before or a week before. You have to learn your things, right, as you're kind of going through this class. It's going to kind of point you in the right direction, what to learn a little bit more on, as you are maybe some things you don't understand. So I wanted to kind of go through that a little bit today as well. I know you guys had interview practices, and this will complement that process a little bit. So I wanted to cover that today and give you the rest of the class will be practice. So I'll give you another practical example to work off of, and the same thing, we will review the code, and all of that stuff. So it's kind of that's a goal for today. And any questions on anything we've gone through last time? If you recall, last time we spent a lot of time on that's reviewing the code for interface design for that zoo problem. Any questions from there or anything else? No? Cool. All right, so hopefully the whole polymorphism and the interfaces, which are kind of two related principles, abstract classes, are more or less clear to you now. That's really critical. So if it's not, always let me know. We can certainly go through that again. But so we'll be building on that. So just a couple of things I wanted to go over that I have here in the slides. I'm going to start with when it relates to a technical interview. And please feel free to ask any questions, follow up. These are really high level things. I'll expand on them, but just hopefully give you a little bit more in order to prepare. So as you go in your job, obviously there's going to be the way companies do it differently, right? The technical interviews or interviewing process. So I'll go give you a little bit of a kind of real world scenario. I assume none of you have interviewed for technical jobs yet. So should be hopefully useful information. But since I work in the industry, and companies do it differently, so the way we do it at National Restaurant Association, basically stages, right? You guys may have already heard from Oscar and others. There are stages of interview like any other job, right? You usually get kind of a HR person reviewing your qualification initially. They may or may not send your resume to technical technical lead, like the manager, so it's very important, right? So that's one thing as you are preparing your resume, right? Even before this whole technical interview. So let's not jump in that yet. So question, do you guys already have your resumes created, or it's something that you are starting to work on now? Anybody has a resume?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay.
Just a few templates, like how is it supposed to look like, but
Sure.
none.
Makes sense. Okay. So I'm sure, Oscar is probably going to go more into that, but what I'm trying to say is that sometimes your resume doesn't even go past the HR person, right? So, I work with my HR department, and we tell them, here's what we're looking for this role, right? So depending whether it's a junior role, senior role, we're saying we need to see on any candidate, say 5+ years of Java, or maybe it's a junior automation, we want to see knowledge of Selenium and that type of stuff, right? So in big companies usually kind of rely on the first line of, I guess, defense is HR, right? So HR person likely to be working with recruiters and reaching out and just getting all the resumes, right? So usually the technical the hiring managers, which are your QA manager or development manager, whoever what type of job you're interviewing, they're pretty busy and they don't really have time to kind of look at all the resumes, right? So HR people do that, at least in our company, right? In any decent sized company, there's usually a lot of resumes you get, and most of them don't really fit the bill. So it's not that every job in technology has like 50 candidates. A lot of the candidates are remote, they're offshore, and all of that stuff. So there is a lot of demand for technology, but we also get a lot of resumes. Hopefully, it makes sense, right? There is a lot of demand for candidates. There's a lot of jobs, more jobs than qualified candidates, but the key word here is qualified. So that's kind of where the trick is. So sometimes we have jobs for development, and like I said, companies always complain that there is not enough developers, and we get like 50 70 resumes and stuff like that. But like I said, 99% of them would be junk. It would be people with completely different experience, just trying to get into technology. There's people that work in completely different fields, or people that are looking to work from like abroad, from other countries or something like that, which we don't hire. So that type of stuff. But back to my point, it's important to have your resume, obviously, really hitting on all the job needs. So as you are preparing your resume, it's not one and done. So every time you have a job that you're applying to, and it's critical for you guys because you're just starting out and you don't really have a lot of experience. So you have to be creative on the type of projects that you put in there. So, and the projects that you're doing in the school certainly, should go in your resume. But, you need to tailor your job for your resume for every job. So, and I'm not talking about making up stuff. I'm talking about really emphasizing the things that they're looking for, because like I said, HR managers are pretty, they're giving guidelines, right? I want to see this and that, and everything, any resume that they don't see those qualifications, they just throw away, especially when there are a lot. So it's really important to not have your resume as, you do it and you put all your experience and then you just send it to any job without even looking at what they're looking for. So does that make sense?
Yep.
I assume you guys heard that before, that you need to tailor, but I just wanted to reemphasize that a little. So, for your resumes, I assume you have your, what companies are looking, and we, certainly including my company, look for junior type of developers and QA engineers such as yourself is really, latest knowledge of latest and greatest technologies, right? So sometimes you have, even advantage over some more senior folks on the team, because senior folks usually have deal with a lot of legacy systems and all of that stuff, and they usually have more of a background of legacy technologies and that type of stuff. So you're certainly learning some of the latest and greatest things in this class. So emphasize that, right? All the frameworks, all the testing tools, and all of that stuff. So certain companies are looking to get that fresh knowledge from engineers, and your projects are really important to put in there and describe in detail. So, you're probably going to have like 1-page resume at this point because you're just starting out. So do good details on the project that you've done, and what the, what type of role you played. So certainly don't discount this, right? Don't just say, well, I don't have, real life experience, and I'm not going to put anything. This counts as experience. You're doing stuff. So anyway, so with that, so once you have your resume and kind of goes through your, the organization, and you get to the initial round of interviews, like I said, it's usually HR, where they just kind of, it's interview. In our case, we basically, try to weed out candidates that don't fit the bill in various things, right? So HR, interview usually 15-30 minutes, no more than that. And they look for things like, culture fit. They look for things like salary expectations. They look for things like expectations for work environment, that type of stuff. So they really look, it's pretty light. So they're just gonna ask things about yourself and that type of stuff. Ask you about what you're expecting in terms of salary, and are you working locally? Do you expect to be remote? That's a very common question now with COVID situation changing things. So just real simple things. So they're looking for you to hopefully tell them why you're interested in the company as well. So I know our HR folks ask those questions, right? Because they want to have folks that are not just I just need a job. And that applies more for kind of senior level resources rather than to you guys, because senior level resources usually have more different opportunities. So it's important for us to understand why they're looking to come to us. Are they running away from something? Which is totally fine sometimes, but it's important to understand, like, okay, why are you interested in working for our company? What have you read about it, right? So we're also looking for folks to understand the company as well. So make sure you read up about the company, the product, while and think of ways why you interested in working in them. So does it make sense so far? Is this useful, or is it kind of, you guys heard this before and it's just redundant information?
No, it's useful. And a quick question. So
Yeah.
is that means like if we would have like 3 interviews a day, let's say, so that means like 3 different, basically we're gonna prepare for 3 different companies, right?
Yeah, well, if you have 3 different interviews a day, that's great. First of all,
But I mean, it sounds like like a lot of job.
well, if you get 3 different interviews a day, but yeah, that's, it doesn't matter, right? You have to prepare for each interview. You got to treat it, in the right way. You don't know, which job is going to pan out. So you have to give yourself some time to prepare. That's what I'm saying, right? So if give yourself a day to do a preparation. Don't just rush and just think that you're gonna figure it out while you're interviewing, right? You need to give yourself maybe at least a day minimum to get prepared for interview. I would say even more if you can, but part of that is just really looking what the company does. If you're working with a recruiter, if a recruiter represents you, as opposed to you sending your resumes directly, which is usually the case, you're probably gonna want to work with a recruiter. They will help you with that process. A good recruiter will help you succeed by they know the environment, hopefully, and they know what type of questions are being asked, what's important for the company, and they can give you a little bit more guidance on what to prepare for. So they will tell you, the HR person is this, and here's what they usually ask. Here's the recruiter will probably tell you about the company, about the role in more specifics. So that's really a advantage of working with a good recruiter. Then they have some insight. So
we're gonna adjust our resume for each company.
Slightly, right? I'm not saying rewrite it because you have the skills that you have, right? But if what I usually do when I apply, I look at type of company it is, and I look at their needs, right? Their requirements for the job. So, and I make sure, because when you work at when you work in a company, you do a lot of things, right? A lot of projects. I do different things in my job. So, and I can't really put them all on the resume, right? So, maybe in one company I was doing more of a technical project management. In another company I was doing things like architecture and design and all of that stuff. And I do it all basically as a director, but sometimes I do more or less of kind of a function, right? It depends on the team needs and projects and that type of stuff, and who else is on the team. If it's a company where the team is small, I get to do it all. If there is like project management department, and I work with them. So when I read job description, in my past, when I apply, I kind of look at what they're looking for, because every company is unique, and if they're looking for somebody that not only can do technical architecture, but can actually do technical project management, right? Because they don't have a separate department, for example. I emphasize those things, and I say I managed projects. If I did, obviously, I don't make things up, but I will emphasize that part of my previous experience. And so that's really an example what I'm trying to get. If you've done something, and again, for you guys, it could be in your training sessions as well. So if you did Scrum Master stuff, and the company is looking for QA engineer, and they say agile environment, and I know sometimes QA engineers make good Scrum Masters as well. Companies do QA leads as Scrum Masters. So you can emphasize that you were a Scrum Master in a training class, so they know, even if you don't have real work experience, what that you were training for it. So but yeah, so it's not rewriting the entire thing, but it's really putting the stuff that matters for the company forward, right? So emphasizing those areas, because you'll see, you can't really list everything that you've done for a company. Your resumes would be huge. So you kind of, with time, as you gain experience and you go through jobs, you'll see that you usually put like the main projects, main functions, that type of stuff, right? You don't want your resume to be like 50 pages. Nobody's going to read that. So that's why you kind of tweak. Does it make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. So that's really, again, for you guys, it'll probably be a little bit easier now because you just don't have that much stuff to put on there, but keep that in mind. So, with that HR interview, that's really just, they do definitely want to see usually how, you prepare for a job. So they may ask you, right? Like, okay, and it's not really like, hey, tell me 5 things you know about our company. Nothing like that. They'll say, what makes you interested in our company? All right, that type of stuff. And I also ask the same thing sometimes. What caught your eye, especially if it's like a senior developer or above. They usually have a choice, like I said. Where they apply it to many companies, and now any company is looking for somebody to come in and spend a little time. Nobody wants to like churn through people every month. So companies are interested in bringing people that they're going to spend at least a year or two, right? Usually 2 years is kind of the default average length in technology world. So it's not a lot. It's certainly not like nobody, I think, expects people to stay 10, 20 years, but certainly they don't want somebody just to come in and figure out that they don't like it and then they jump off in a month. So they look for, why are you interested, right? If you don't know, then how do they know if you're not going to just become disinterested? So that's the reason there. But yeah, that's kind of usually the job of the HR to get that out, and basic screen communication skills, salary expectations, all that stuff.
I have a question for you. I liked this thing that one of the instructor told us. So basically, his friend, he jumped from one company to another company within a certain amount of years, every half a year. Do you think it's like possible now? Because I actually liked that thing. To me, it seems like, I will gain a lot of experience by jumping from one company to another. I'll be more valuable, and this way I will be able to negotiate better salary over time.
So my response to that and advice would be to work in consulting on the right. So that's preferred, I think. If you work in consulting, so you go for a consulting company, and the consulting companies will put you on the projects like that. So you become a contractor. So I think that's a good thing for you guys to gain experience, right? Become a contractor. Usually, for you guys, you probably don't want to become independent contractors because you don't have that much experience. So you can be part of the company that just places you, and those are like 6 to 3-month contract, 6-month contract, a year contract, that type of stuff, and then you get that experience. But that's much better than you going for like a full-time job and then jumping every 6 months, because first, you can probably do that a couple times, but what you're gonna get after a while, people are not stupid. The hiring manager are gonna look at it in HR and they're gonna say, okay, this guy in 2 years switched 4 jobs. I can see that he's jumping every 6 months, so he's gonna come here. We're gonna, choose him over other candidates. And then in 6 months, this person is probably not going to deliver much of a value to us, right? You can't really deliver too much in 6 months, no matter how good you are. By the time you learn environment, by the time you become effective, it's going to be at least 4, 5, 6 months. So, they're going to just reject you. So you're going to basically mess up your resume. So if you want to do that, I totally support that. For you starting out, go for consulting. That way you don't have to explain anything. You're a consultant. You go through project to project. You're not screwing up the company. You're not screwing up your resume. So,
I see. Thank you.
But you can certainly do it 1 or 2 times in the beginning, but after that, you're just not going to get hired. they're going to see that you're jumping every 6 months. So, if I saw somebody that, switches job every 6 months, I personally will hire them. And I totally understand it's good for you to kind of get, different exposure, but in 6 months, you're not going to learn much. It's in the company, right? Because the expectations are usually different in a company. In a consulting, it's tougher. So when you get in consulting, they expect you to deliver right away. They don't care if you're learning or not. They will say, here the stuff, here's the dev team, partner with them, and you basically going to be evaluated on your progress there. The advantage of getting a full-time job is usually they don't have to pay for you hourly, so they don't really they make an investment in you, right? So that's kind of what we do when we hire you. You make an investment, and you basically investment means they're more patient and give you more time to learn. Maybe if you don't know some technology, they will give you even training, that full-time company, to kind of grow you, especially if they get you for cheap by you being a junior resource. So they'll invest in you, and you can learn on the job and without that crazy pressure. So that's a trade-off that you gotta watch for, right? In consulting, you better be ready to deliver, but you're gonna gain that experience. Your resume is gonna look good. Or if you want to have a little bit more time to get adjusted, if you're not so sure about your skills, maybe it's better to get to a company that recognizes that and give you but I would say stay with them at least a year. 6 months, I don't know what you can learn. So okay. All right, so talked about that, talked about resume, jumping from job to job. And then, once you have a little bit more experience, I think you can, 2 years is a good target. If you're not, you're trying to get your salary up, that type of stuff, you can every 2 years is a good target, I think. All right, so what else do I want to talk about? So then from HR perspective, usually, like I said, it's the first step, and then you get to your, technical interviews, or maybe sometimes it's another screen with the hiring manager, but usually it's more of a kind of a team interview, and those could be, in our company, it's 3-4 interviews, so between different teams. So do keep that in mind. It's not just going to be your QA manager or development resources talking to you. You most likely going to talk to a business analyst and their team, project manager, QA engineers if you're going for QA, and then development managers. So just really the departments you're going to work with, right? So also prepare for those in a different way, right? So hopefully your recruiter or HR person will kind of tell you, hey, you're going to be talking to these folks, and an HR person should tell you their titles. So obviously they're going to be asking you different questions. So for example, if you're talking about 2 project managers or Scrum Master team, they may talk to you about your experience in the Scrum environment, right? Like they'll say, hey, what type of environment did you work or study in, and tell me about kind of your role and all the processes you had, right? So be prepared to talk about agile practices, how the entire agile SDLC, right? It's software development lifecycle. So for that case, just make sure you have a good answer for that, right? Like, okay, we ran agile process, which, basically, involved stakeholders from business, technical teams. And, maybe you'll say that you were part of, you kind of rotated into a Scrum Master where you worked, with a product owner to define user stories and prioritize them, put them on a Scrum board, estimates with development team, assign them to sprints, and all of the good things. So you can give a kind of fast, even if you didn't do it in a real world environment, just going through details is good. So they understand that the process. So that's kind of so just brush up on that. And business analyst, the team in my company, they'll ask you about what's a good user story for you, right? As a QA, what do you need to write your test cases? Because the BA will be giving you you and developers user stories. So they're gonna ask, what's what do you need in the user story? What type of requirements? Maybe different level of requirements you can work with. There's like a high level, mid level, low level, requirements. So you'll probably be asked to work on all levels, not only user stories. So high level is used for kind of like high level estimation, and so on. So be ready to discuss, hey, I worked with, user stories and acceptance criteria. We talked about it last class, right? We talked about definition of done, acceptance criteria. So show your understanding of kind of details of what a good user story. Just a good user story has all these factors, and that's how how to test it. That's how when it's done, and that's the type of testing that you need to do based on different expectations. Even things like UX, UI, right? Maybe you will be testing with even looking at the UI part as well. So comparing the deliverable to the wireframes and all of that good stuff. So different departments will be interested in different things, right? Because you're going to be most likely, unless you're going for work for a company with like 3 people, you're going to have departments, right? Usually companies are structured that they have development, QA department, like our company, which I lead. They and the UX team I also lead. They have project management. Sometimes it's separate department, and they have the project managers that could be also agile, Scrum masters. They have business analysis department, and those are all BAs that you're going to be working, getting user stories. So they're going to be asking you questions based on kind of how they're going to interact with you. So does it make sense?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So again, just like resume, you need to make sure you don't just have your technicals hat on. You need to have, you need to understand what they're going to be asking and how they're going to interact with you. And so then for the technical part, which is I'm sure you all very, very interested in, it's definitely a big thing, right? Especially for junior, but not only thing, right? So what I do, in my interviewing process, when we hire QA or developers, I solicit feedback from everybody, from HR, from BA, from project managers, from developers. And usually a person it's a rarity that a person will get hired if there is a major red flag from one team, right? If it's somebody may say, okay, well, it's I'm lukewarm about the candidates because they don't have experience in this, or their version, was their view of certain aspect is a bit different, right? Something like that. Then it's okay, if I have, I feel strongly on the technical side and other departments are okay, we'll probably proceed. But if somebody just says, whoa, no way, I can't work with this person, or we shouldn't hire because we're looking for X and this person is Y, and I don't think they can bridge that gap. Doesn't happen a lot, but we usually won't hire. So take that seriously when you talk to other departments than development QA. So for the technical interview, right, usually you're gonna probably have your QA engineers and developers, whether one or two interviews. But for QA engineers, it's a mix of kind of like theoretical questions, getting your understanding, into the QA process, different variations, right? The type of testing, the type of test cases, load testing, automation. I know my QA engineers will ask, as well, that really goes for somebody that's got a lot of experience. They'll ask some edge questions like, hey, have you dealt with this situation? And they kind of really try to see if they have the experience that they say they will. For you guys that are starting out, it's really just understanding of the frameworks, the tools, that's really important. So your knowledge is what you have right now rather than your experience. And that's one of the reasons that I'm trying to give you a little bit of a the more details about some of the things that you're learning, right? For the data structures and good coding practices, because it all goes into knowledge, and that's all you have right now. You don't really have a lot of practical, real world experience. So knowledge is where you're going to be mostly judged. So make sure you really, really know your stuff, because you can't really have that situation where sometimes some person have experience in something that company is looking for, but they don't know some other things, and that's okay. For you guys, it's really just the knowledge and what the learning you've done in this class is kind of the key. So but for so going to the slides, if there are no questions, and feel free to stop me anytime of questions what I'm talking about. But the technical interview usually kind of involves around some problems, right, that they would want you to solve, and they want to see how you code. So doesn't matter if you're going for QA engineer or a developer, you're gonna write some code. So we basically kind of usually like a coding exercise. That's the stuff we've been going through. So what you want to do is stuff that we already discussed, right? We kind of covered this, the brute force, right? The solution, just how you do without computer, and then you kind of put it back to some type of data structure pattern, right? Remember we talked about hash tables last Thursday, and we said, okay, if you need to know dedupe something or find duplicates, hash tables do that. So tie it to the data structure. If you need to do a lot of inserts and deletes, use maybe a linked list, because they're faster, and you can actually tell the interviewer why you're choosing some kind of data structure. You could say, I'm initializing this because it's faster because I'm doing a lot of deletes and inserts and it's a linked list, or I'm doing just using array list because I'm just doing iterations and oops. One second. It just moved from me. But yeah, it's actually cool that you know that stuff, right? And again, knowledge is your the only angle you have. So let them know that you know about like OM notation, and as you kind of going through that stuff. So test cases, right? So make sure as you kind of do the brute force, you go through, you're probably going to have example, right? Like input, output, and just go through that real quick. And edge cases, improvements to the problem. Edge case would be if like input has 0. Oh wow, that's really doing going crazy on me. I have to let me refresh the page. Just keeps kicking me out. Oops, 1 second. Just back to where I was, but yeah, basically, anything edge cases like empty input or anything like that, those are edge cases. So sometimes you may want to add those in, right? Check for empty input, or that type of stuff. So, or you need to sort an array. An array has 1 element, right? And then you don't need, if you kind of say if length equals 1, then return that array. So you may not need to actually do stuff like that, and that's an edge case. So yeah, we kind of talked about this. Does it make sense so far? Any questions on any of these points? Well, you may get stuck, right? So it's okay. Especially you guys don't have tons of experience yet, and there might be something. Sometimes even interviewers will give you a problem that they know you're not going to solve, or solve in the time that you have allotted. And what they want to know is how you handle that pressure, stress. So, no matter what the situation is, let them know, right? So, you can talk through that, or don't just sit there and spend, half an hour. If you're stuck and you're going to like pretend that you're solving something, and then you're going to tell them at the end that you just have no answer, that's not good. They're basically going to think that, okay, well, this person, we understand this couldn't be solved, but they should have at least asked, or they should have said that they're stuck, because they could help you, and then you could get further, right? So I know a lot of folks do that because of pride, or they think that it's not good that they're asking questions. I don't subscribe to that. I would rather have, especially junior resources, that's expected for you to struggle. So don't think that you need to either shine or fail. There's in between, right? You have to, if you solve the problem, or whatever technical project they give you, that's great. But if you don't make it all or nothing. So if you're stuck and you can't figure it out right away, just say, look, maybe you can help me. I'm not so sure how to do this, and I'm stuck. Here's what I've tried. Maybe you've tried something and it didn't work, and I'm running out of idea. I'd like to solve it, but I'm a bit blocked. Can you can you help, or something like that? So just try something. If it doesn't work, then you basically let them know, so that's okay. Like I said, we expect that, especially from junior folks, and it's really important to ask questions, so we know that what blockers you have. Can relate to understanding the problem, right? If you're not understanding, don't just assume. Ask questions. It's expected. In fact, that's what I look for. I look for questions, and sometimes, like I said, we make the problem a little bit vague, and we expect questions so that we know that a person can actually not assume, and because you're gonna have that, right? As you're in the real world, as you're getting given a user story or requirement to test, you probably not gonna ever get 100% breakdown of that. So you're gonna have to ask questions. You're gonna have to work with business analyst or product owner, and you're gonna ask, okay, it's how's it going to work in this scenario? What if user does that? What if the user does that? So this is really important point. And same here with if you have no idea, a little bit more context. Sometimes you just they may give you a problem or something to solve, and you just don't even know what maybe something with some application that you have no idea or something like that, and you just don't be shy at kind of asking for more context. A hint, same thing, right? It really goes under. If you're stuck, ask for a hint. Okay, I tried this, I tried that, I want to solve this. I have a blocker. Can you give me a hint and move forward with that? So does it make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Did you guys go over any of this type of stuff in your interview prep, or was it more just specific questions?
What do you mean?
Well, like how to prepare, like in terms of communication for the interviews, or was it more of a just really specific interview questions? Like, did you guys go over any of this type of stuff on the interview prep that you had last week or week ago?
We don't have interview preparation.
Well,
we just have a just mock interview. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you mean
that's
mock
what I
interview?
meant. Right, that's what I meant. Mock interview. Cool. All right, so hopefully this will complement that type of stuff. So so going back to this gathering requirements, so don't rush, right? I'm giving you all kind of problems to solve. That's what you're very likely to get, like those small problems. Do something, write a unit test for it. That type of stuff. So the more you do those, the more practice you're gonna have solving the problems, and the more practice you're gonna have coding. So it goes beyond just passing interview. So make sure you understand the requirements, right? The worst thing is you solve something and you celebrate, and then it figures out that that's not was being, as a QA engineers. You guys usually are in many organizations I've been part of, they're the ones that know the requirements the best, because you're gonna test for them, right? So make sure you put that foot forward, that you are you are asking all the questions, 100% how it's going to work, because if you don't understand them, what you're going to test for, right? Then that's a big thing. So very important for you to know requirements, even if engineers sometimes they're being cowboy and they will just code for like happy path, right? Not worrying about negative scenarios or any of those things, and the developers will do that all day long. And you guys are the ones that need to pick up the slack. So make sure you get the requirements, input examples, right? So okay, what do you expect as an input output? Edge cases, like you could say, if there is a some type of input. You could say, is there a situation it will be null, or one, or single element, or could there be, if they're looking for some type of maybe what would say, let's say, order an array or something like that. Maybe you can have a duplicates in the array. So ask them about stuff like that, right? That just doesn't fit the happy path. So think of that for a bit and clarify. And input output, we kind of talked about that. So just give it, when you're doing the brute force, try the input output, in the brute force. So again, none of these things don't need to be like, take you an hour or even, half an hour. These are fast things, right? So don't think of it as you're taking away from your precious coding time or, any of that stuff. So but you do need to understand what's being asked. So just all of this can be kind of figured out in few minutes, right? And it will show the interviewer that you're actually thinking, right? That's the key. So we talked about this brute force real quick, right? So here's how you do it on paper. You start writing pseudocodes. You can make it the real code, but pseudocode is really used so that you can kind of put together the solution without having to think too much through code, right? So that's the key, right? So you kind of have pseudocode, and if you run out of time, you at least have this pseudocode. So that's better than nothing. I would take a developer that just wrote pseudocode, and especially sometimes, we give problems and we give them like 5 minutes. Okay, do something. And if they have an elegant solution and it's not all 100% real code, it's just pseudocode. That's okay. That's better than nothing. So kind of quickly write pseudocode, and then it'll help you clarify your thoughts. This thing we talked about simplifying, right? Keep it simple, stupid, that principle. So you can, if you have time, you can break it down, you can simplify it. So that's always good thing. Writing elegant code on interview is always good. You already know what good code is, right? So all the principles, keeping it simple. So if you wrote a function, it does like 20 things. If you have time, break it down. Extract another function. Get the behavior out in there, or at least maybe tell the interviewer as you're going through that, say, okay, yeah, if I had more time, I would refactor that. I would get that method out. I would do this. I would maybe rename it. So if you didn't have time to do all of those things, at least talk about that. Because don't assume that they're just gonna think, okay, you had like 15 minutes to do it, and they expect bad code. That's not true. So if you can simplify it, but don't do it before you actually do the actual coding and testing. So you can do the simplification at the end. It's a refactoring exercise. So get the functionality first, write the code, test it, with simple inputs, outputs that we talked about here. And then, you can simplify it if you have time. And, obviously you're going to have a data structure, in there. So you'll introduce a data structure based on kind of what you need to do, whether it's an array or array list or a linked list or hash table, or maybe a combination of those. And then, before you turn it in, just run a couple examples, right? Different examples to make sure your code works. Just take, a simple input and go through each loop, each double loop, and just write down what happens. If you have obviously computer, if it's not whiteboarding exercise, you will just run the program and kind of give it like you guys been doing in class. But sometimes it's whiteboarding. You won't be able to just run it, so just go through each thing. Okay, so pretty basic stuff, pretty hopefully straightforward. Any questions on this? Cool. I don't know if I mentioned this. This is important, repeating what you heard, clarifying requirements. So once they kind of talked, hey, here's the problem. It makes sense to just kind of repeat it. So you're looking for a function that does this and has this type of input and has that type of outputs, and that's where you kind of can involve the edge cases and that type of stuff. So just repeat back what you heard. So even if it's simple, it's okay. But this is if you have to have a collection decision done. It's kind of if we've talked about this, right? Next, if you need access to an element in a collection really fast, array, right, has the allocation memory, so you're just using an array. Insert data, we talked about linked list or hash table, right? Because both are pretty fast on the insertion. We'll talk about heaps, in further, so you're not there yet. And connections as a graph data structure. So we haven't covered these. We're gonna cover those on Thursday class. So graphs and graphs and heaps are usually not as used in typical companies. But so all right, so that's where we kind of so we are just a few things there, and leads us to our problem. I want you guys to keep practicing. So and feel free to ask questions. So give this 15-20 minutes like we always do. And problem is, write a method that moves all zeros in an array to its end. And you should maintain all the order of all the other elements. So here's an example of input output. Given the input of 102040, output is you would move all the zeros to the end, but you would keep the other numbers intact. So 1, 2, 4 will stay here. So what are the questions around this?
Should it be new array, or can we create new array?
Very good question. I don't know. Can you create a new array, or doing this in place? In place.
Okay.
What else? All good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. 15 minutes?
Yep.
All right. I will post this onto, well, I'll keep it here. So there you go. So go ahead. We'll come back at what, 5:03, around 5:15, 5:20. So, all right. Good luck. All right, anybody, how we doing? Anybody needs more time?
I should have probably asked this before getting into this, but can we use a linked list for that?
Can you use a linked list, did you say?
To remove elements? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
So anybody wants to share? Or you guys need more time?
I did it with the linked list, but I'm not sure. It has 2 loops. That's the best solution I could come up with.
Well, let's take a look. You know, maybe the rest of the class can chime in, see if there's anybody come up with a different solution.
Okay. I can't share the screen.
1 second. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I created a linked list. I added all the elements. And then in the first loop, I removed the zeros. And
Oh.
then in the second loop, I just added back the zeros depending on the size difference. So I kept the size of the initial
Mhm.
linked list, and then I kept the size after removing the zeros. And then I just added back the zeros.
Very cool. Okay, so that's so 2 loops, okay, to the list and okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Gotcha, yeah, okay. Any other approaches? Anybody was able to do it with 1 loop? No? So maybe think of for that, maybe think of kind of the swapping, you know, elements with as you encountering 0 and swapping it with a different element, but you know, with the last element. But
Yeah, I was thinking that approach too, but then we would have to check if the last element is 0 as well.
yeah, so that's what could be a little bit. It's not as straightforward, but yeah, okay, cool. All right, well, you know, for the rest of you, please finish that. See if you can do a different approach or whatever approach you start doing. I'll finish it up and definitely think of if you can do it in 1 loop, so you keep the time down. So be interesting to share next time. All right. Otherwise, if no questions, I'll give you guys time to relax before your 6 o'clock class, and see you on Thursday then.
Thank you, Ingrid.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you.